and respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our community. And finally, a housekeeping item to let you know that this session will be recorded for future use on our YouTube channel. If you don't wish your image to be recorded, please just close the video link. And it's a great pleasure this morning to introduce our speaker, Hilary Fabrizio. Hilary is a development association in planned giving, Office of the Vice President, External Relations, University of Alberta. More importantly, perhaps, she's an avid believer that all of us can be philanthropists, regardless of net worth, social class, gender, or age. At her work, she connects donors to causes that they are passionate about. She specializes in empowering donors to look at making future charitable gifts through their wills. And when she's not working, she spends a lot of time soaking up as much time as she possibly can with her wife and with her 18-month-old daughter, who is probably a bit of a challenge in terms of how much time can be soaked. So over to you, Hilary, and thank you for attending this morning.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Larry, for that wonderful introduction. It's really great to be here with all of you today. So as Larry mentioned, I work at the University of Alberta, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the U of A today. I work in fund development, specializing on working with folks who are looking at estate planning and the ways that they can really be strategic with it, particularly in the area of philanthropy. They say that there's only one thing that in life that's guaranteed, and that's death and taxes. And charitable giving is a great way for a lot of folks to redirect some of that money that would go to Ottawa in the form of taxes on death to causes that they care about. And so I'm here today to talk a little bit about that. I do have a slide deck that I'm going to share. Hopefully I'll be able to make it work. Here we go. So I'll just jump right in. Okay. So today we're going to talk about how the queer community in general can harness estate planning so that we can all leave a legacy that really reflects our values. As Larry said, you don't need to be rich, you don't need to be powerful, you don't need to be, a certain gender or have a certain net worth to really make a difference for communities that we all care about. And I think that we're all pretty familiar with that, especially in the queer community. A lot of you have dedicated your lives to activism, to really championing causes that you care about and forwarding the rights for all of our 2S LGBTQ plus community. So a little bit about me. As I said, I work at the U of A. Thought I'd throw in some pictures of my kid because basically she takes up a lot of time these days. So I live with my wonderful wife, and we had a daughter last September. And really our entire purpose and kind of my life's goals right now really center around how can I raise my daughter in a world that is equitable, that is, where she can grow up having two moms and she doesn't need to think twice about it. And I know a lot of advocacy work has been done, by so many people who came before us, who've enabled us to, get married and have a kid and, be out and proud at work and organize events that are, centered around the queer community. And I just feel so lucky every single day. When I think about, my why around why I ended up in fund development. So I actually have a background in real estate, and that's where I started out my career. And I worked there for almost a decade selling new homes for a couple of different builders throughout Edmonton. And what I always loved was working with people, connecting with them, hearing their stories. But it was a bit soul-sucking in a lot of ways, and I wanted to do something more. And I thought about what I really wanted to spend my day-to-day doing, and it was continuing to create those connections with people, but to actually do something that was a little bit more towards the progress of, all of humanity. And so I ended up in fundraising. They say nobody ever goes to school to study fundraising, but they just fall into it. And sort of that's what happened for me. And I love working with, older demographics. That's typically who I'm working with people who maybe are considering end of life plans, their estate planning, all different areas of support at the U of A. So that's kind of me at a micro level. When I start thinking about me and my values and kind of things that I'm passionate and what I care about, equity is something that, is one of my core values. How can we support, people of color? How can we support our Indigenous communities? How can we support our trans brothers and sisters? These are all things that I think about, especially now that I have a daughter that I'm raising. It's definitely put it in more perspective for me. I think about, financial inequities as well. I grew up in a really lower middle class family where financial struggle was, a really big part of my identity. And I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet when, I went off to university with no parental support. And so it's something that is really core to me and my being, is making sure that people feel empowered with their money, because it is a form of social capital. I'm not sure where I cut out
You were still
the
talking.
internet. I'm in the office today. Sorry, can everybody hear me okay?
We can certainly hear you. You were
Yes.
talking about your personal commitments, your personal goals.
Perfect. My apologies. I really hate internet. It never works when you need it to, does it? Okay. So takeaways from today, I'm just going to skip over. I don't know where I cut out, but we might as well get into the meat of the matter, because I want to make sure that we move along and that I'm conscious of your time. I kind of think of it in two ways. When you look at estate planning and charitable giving, there's kind of the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain. The left being the piece that's really logical and kind of informs those really concrete plans. There's only one thing that you take away from today, and I know that you guys have historically had wills and estates lawyers come and present. So you probably already all know this, but every single one of us needs a will. Doesn't matter if you have kids or not, if you are married or not, partnered, please go do your will. Doesn't matter if you include charity in those plans or not. That is entirely up to you, but this will make your life much, much easier. Today, we're also going to go through an overview of the different kind of ways that you can make a legacy gift through your estate plans. And so there's many different forms that these types of gifts can take. So for example, like gifts of life insurance or RSPs or strict bequests. So I'm going to give you a nice overview of all of those so that you can really be informed on what might be, the most tax efficient for your situation. And then I'm going to also give an overview of some of the tax benefits of including a gift to charity in your estate plans. It can be extremely beneficial, and it can offset a lot of the taxes that are owable on death. So on the right side of your brain, the other way to kind of consider this and think about it is, your estate plans are, in essence, the culmination of your life's work and your life's values. So it's not a document that you just prepare and you think, okay, I'm going to pass everything along to, my nieces and nephews. And that's it. It really needs to be something that you sit down and you consider, okay, what do I want my legacy to be when I'm no longer here? You have spent your entire lives working, saving, basically, gaining assets throughout your lifetime. And when you die, basically everything is deemed disposed of. So where do you want it to go? You have the power to create a better world. That one, I think, kind of speaks for itself. Think about what your values are. Think about what change you want to see. The LGBTQ2S+ community in general has been extremely community driven through grassroots advocacy, through volunteerism, through activism. And so a lot of you have already helped us create, a better world. The world that I live in is better because of most of you, but you continue to have that power even when you're gone. And so I encourage you all to think about that. And then the final piece is that a lot of times people that I work with, they think it's one or the other. Either you're taking care of your loved ones or, you're giving your money away. And in reality, in most circumstances, it's both. You can take care of your loved ones while, really making an impact for a cause that you care about. And there's a lot of ways that it won't significantly reduce maybe the inheritance that you hope to leave to your family or to your loved ones. So at a glance, just doing a bit of digging, Guy and I actually, we've had quite a few conversations about this topic, and I know you folks here at Sage who are incredibly involved. I mean, you guys have a pretty good idea of what the landscape for LGBTQS plus seniors in Canada looks like. But in general, at the last Canadian census, they estimate that there's about 335,000 seniors living in Canada. In general, we see up to 32%, I believe, in 2020. 32% of people who are age 65 plus made a gift to charity. So that means about 100,000 LGBTQ plus seniors in Canada have incredible agency in making change through charitable donations. We tend to be less wealthy. Obviously, historically, there has been a lot of discrimination that has impacted earnings, impacted net worth. We don't need to dive into all of those details, but there's a lot of, intersections in the way that this community has been able to build up wealth. However, we are better educated. Gay men in particular, when I was pulling the stats, like, you guys are killing it in terms of education level. About 70% of our seniors LGBTQ2S plus community are single, or are childless, sorry. So they do not have children. Many are single. I think the stat around that was about 50% when I looked at the census data. And they're also less likely to have wills in place. This was an American statistic that I found, but when I was doing some research for this presentation and an event that we're hosting at the U of A in a few weeks, I found a statistic that basically states that for LGBTQ2S plus folks who are age 55 plus, only 56% have their estate plans finalized, whereas their counterparts, their heterosexual counterparts, have about 70% for finalization rates. So that's a huge discrepancy there. And, I think a lot of it stems from the fact that maybe a lot of folks in the community think, I don't have children, I don't need a will, I am not comfortable going and finding, an estate planner that I feel comfortable talking to. I don't know what I want to do. I don't think I have any assets to pass on. But in a lot of cases, this isn't true. And, a lot of people tend to underestimate what they have and how much of it will be, able to go to heirs or charity or wherever you want. We also know that this community is incredibly charitable and community driven, as I previously stated. So in general, legacy can mean a couple of things. So in the broadest sense, it's what you leave in your will. So an amount of money or property left to somebody. But I encourage you all to think about it on a greater scale. Legacy is also, the long-lasting impact of your values, of who you are, of your history, of your past, and of your entire life. And so it can be very two-pronged. A lot of people, when they think about doing their will, again, they think about, okay, this is the amount of money I have, this is the amount of property I have, and this is where I want to leave it. But really, it is the full expression of your values and the way that you want to be remembered in the future. So there's a few different ways that folks can make charitable gifts through their estate plans. Probably the most common are through charitable bequests. This is probably 90% of what people do. And this is similar to what you would also leave towards, your friends, your family, your children, whoever. So they're essentially your cash, securities, real estate, any tangible personal property that you wish to pass along. So specific bequests typically are going to be the first thing that are paid out through your estate once it goes through probate. And those would be items such as, I want to leave $5,000 to my cousin, George. That would be a specific bequest. Or I want to leave my house to this person or this piece of artwork. Residual bequests tend to be paid out after all specific bequests are paid. So residual would be a percentage of your estate. So let's say once you pay out, the $5,000 to George, and you pay out, your house to whoever, everything else you could say, I want to leave 10% to charity, and I want to leave the rest to my nieces and nephews. And so then 10% of whatever is left will be left to, the charity of your choice. Contingent bequests are bequests that are in the event of the primary beneficiary not surviving you. So that would be, let's say you leave everything to your spouse, but if your spouse doesn't survive you, then, the contingent bequest is that you would leave it to somebody else or to a charity of your choice. These are really popular, especially with like RSP beneficiary donations or life insurance donations, but basically it's the backup plan bequest. So this is the most common type of estate gift that people tend to make. The second one that we see that's incredibly popular is life insurance. So a lot of times, many of us, we take out life insurance policies that, when the time comes, we don't really need anymore, but we've sunk a lot of money into paying into those policies. And, we're not really sure what we want to do with them now. So there's different ways for you to gain tax relief either now or in the future. And charities will vary on their acceptance of these types of gifts. So, if there's a charity that you're really passionate about, go talk to them because they may or may not accept gifts of life insurance. If you were looking, let's say you wanted a tax receipt for this year and you had a policy that you had already paid up, but you really won't need, you could donate it to charity and they will give you a charitable tax receipt for the full fair market value of that policy. And then the nice thing is you can always carry those tax credits over 5 years. If you have an existing policy that you're still paying premiums on, that is something that you could also look at giving to a charity. And then typically the way that it works is you would receive a charitable tax receipt for the fair market value of the policy. And then any premiums owing each year, let's say you pay in, $1,000 a year into the premiums, you would receive a tax receipt for those as well. And so it's a nice way to kind of continue gaining that tax relief. And then, once you pass away, you're going to receive, or the charity of your choice is going to receive a really nice gift. And then the other third option, which is a little bit less common, is establishing and donating a brand new policy, especially within your demographic. This is not the type of gift vehicle that really makes sense because usually once, you start getting a little bit older, it's more and more expensive to take out a brand new life insurance policy. And so most people within your demographic are looking at those first two options. The other option is making the charity the beneficiary of your policy. So basically, in that case, life insurance, it's paid out outside of your estate. And so you would make the charity the beneficiary of your policy, and then your executor or your personal representative, they would receive a tax receipt for the full market value of the policy, and then they could use that to offset tax within your estate. So this tends to be quite common as well. Another option that we see quite a bit with a lot of folks who are looking to make an impact through their estate plans are making charities the beneficiary of their registered accounts. So if you don't have a spouse or a child to roll over your registered accounts over to, you are going to be taxed on death on those accounts, and it can be quite significant. Especially, for folks who might be single or might not have children, this is a great area to look to making an impact through a gift to charity, because this is typically where you're going to see a big chunk of your tax bill come in for your estate. The nice thing as well is it's super easy. You can easily go to your, your bank or your investment advisor where you hold your policies, and you can always, fill out a change of beneficiary form, and it's quite simple. It's also paid out outside of your estate, which gives you a little bit more privacy if you don't want everybody to know about it when it goes through probate. So this is a really wonderful option. The other thing with registered accounts is, let's say you want to roll everything over to, a child or a spouse. You can always do that, but then you can always look at making your charity of choice the contingent beneficiary on that vehicle. And so that way, if they don't survive you, something happens, you are able to minimize tax that's paid while also making, a huge difference to a charity that you care about. Securities are extremely common as well. So securities basically are anything that's traded on the stock market. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, anything that's outside of your registered accounts like your RSP, your RIF, or your GSFA. There's huge opportunity here when you donate securities to a charity of your choice. If you transfer those securities directly to charity, as opposed to selling them and then donating cash to the charity, you can save all of the capital gains tax on any of those investments that have accrued. And so if you transfer them directly, you'll receive those capital gains tax savings. If you cash them out, you'll be taxed on the 50% of the gain. So you receive that tax relief there, plus you're able to stack it with your charitable tax receipt. And so for folks who might, have portfolios that exist outside of their registered accounts, this is something to look at as you look to prepare your will. This is always, a great place to give flexibility to your personal representative in choosing which securities are best to donate to charity. Because what they can do when, let's say 20 years from now, you've passed away and your executor is looking at settling your estate, they'll see, oh, you hold TELUS shares that have, huge capital gains on them. These would be really efficient for your estate for you to donate instead of you donating this cash. And so we always recommend that if you are looking at potentially bequeathing securities to a charity of your choice, that you include flexible language. And you can work on this with your lawyer or talk to the charity of your choice about this as well, because normally they'll give you some additional language that really ensures that they have that flexibility and that they're being as tax efficient as possible. And then the final gift area that we see quite a bit are in-kind gifts. So these would be gifts of, tangibles. So you'd be looking at gifting real estate, gifts of personal property, that sort of thing. The tax receipt for this would be issued at fair market value. So we would typically bring in, a third-party appraiser, and then they issue the receipt accordingly. Charities definitely have different regulations and rules around what they will accept and what they will not accept. Like, for example, I work at the University of Alberta. We can be very, very strict on items that we will consider versus not consider. And that's just because we don't necessarily have the resources to ensure that, let's say, your rare book collection are going to be taken care of, and that we'll be able to really use them to share with students or whatever. And so definitely chat with the charity of your choice if this is something that you might be looking to do. I know a lot of people, they've amassed amazing collections of really rare items, and sometimes they want to ensure that they don't just end up in the charity bin when their executor is going through their estate. So think very critically about what you have and where you want it to go. A lot of times people look at these in-kind gifts to friends and family, but sometimes charities can be a really great recipient of these as well. So if you are considering a gift to charity through your estate plans, and you don't really know where to start by contacting some charities. Figure out who aligns with your values, build out a relationship with them and let them know what your plans are. It makes a really big difference because in my experience with the university, a lot of times we don't know that people have included gifts to the university in their will, and then we hear about it once they passed away, and maybe the language that they've included in their will is not specific, and maybe it's not in line with what they actually want to accomplish, or maybe it's something that the charity can't actually act upon because they've included so many specifics that we're not able to be good stewards of that money. And so I know sometimes a lot of people, they're hesitant to talk to charity about these future gifts because you don't know how much it's going to be. You don't know how much you're going to have when you die. You don't know what it's going to look like. And in a lot of ideal situations, we hope that you die with zero. I mean, go spend your money. You worked hard your whole life. Go do what you want to do with it. But it's good for us to know, whether that gift comes in at $1 or $100,000, we want to make sure that we're going to be able to steward that money appropriately and that we're able to honor your wishes. Oftentimes, like for example, in my experience working at the university, people want very specific things. Like I just worked with a donor who's setting something up for trans health in the Faculty of Medicine. And it's very specific. And so we had to really sit down and consult with the faculty to ensure that we would be able to spend that money once it comes in. And so it's a very gentle process. Most charities, it's not going to be high pressure sales. We're not here to steal your money. It's just we're here to be a partner for you. I also encourage you to think about who you want to include in these conversations, whether it be a spouse, whether it be children, whether it be friends, chosen family. It can be really powerful to talk about this as a collective. And a lot of times, when we start thinking about the legacy that we want to leave, especially if you have close relationships with, children or nieces and nephews, like, do you want them to kind of carry on that legacy? Do you want them to hear about, updates on where that money that you're donating to your estate is going to go? Like, do you want them included in that, or would you rather it be private? And so think carefully on kind of what you want to do, because I know with family, with friends and money, sometimes it doesn't mix very well, and we're often nervous and we feel like it's a taboo conversation to have, but it can really make things a little bit more meaningful, once you're gone and, your memory is being preserved. I encourage you all, if you're looking at, these types of gifts, or in general, if you will, give your personal representatives or your executor some flexibility. When things become too specific, and this was the example that I used with gifts of shares, where, if you're giving very specific ones, they might not be the best option for what you actually want to accomplish with your charitable gift, or with, a general bequest to a family member. So give them a little bit of flexibility so that they can be as tax efficient as possible, because we don't know what legislation is going to look like. Another piece with charities, just make sure that you contact the charity to make sure that you are getting their legal name and their charitable registration number. That'll need to be included in anything that you include in your estate plans. And then the final piece is revocability. So any of these types of gifts, they're revocable, except for life insurance, where you're actually giving us the policy, because then you would be receiving the tax receipt today. Like, these are all future gifts that we don't know when or if we will receive. And so don't get caught up on having all of the specifics figured out right now. If things change, if your circumstances change, that's okay. Let's say you decided you wanted to leave a legacy gift to the Humane Society. You put a gift in your will and you realize, I don't think they're going to be good stewards of my money. Or suddenly you hate animals. I don't know. You develop a crazy allergy and then you want nothing to do with them. You can always go back and you can revisit those plans. So don't get too caught up on things being final, because you always have the chance to make changes in these types of gifts. And then I just wanted to include an example that I'll quickly go through with you guys, just to kind of demonstrate some of the tax savings that could exist when you include a gift to charity in your estate plans. So John and Doug are our couple today. They've been together for 20 years and they hold everything they have jointly. So once they die, they leave everything split evenly between three parties. So their two nephews and their best friend, Mary. Their estate is worth 1.2 million. Assets include their home. This is their primary residence, so there's no tax on that when they pass away. They have retirement accounts that equal 400,000. Because they do not have children and both of them are now gone, all of this will be taxable when they pass away. Investments, they have about $200,000. They have received about 100,000 in capital gains. So they would pay about 50,000 in tax on that, or they would pay tax on the 50,000, sorry. And then they have a savings account. So there would be no tax payable on that either. When they pass away, their estate will owe almost $200,000. And so each of their three beneficiaries will receive just under $340,000. So let's shift the framework a little bit. So what if they incorporated a gift to charity in those estate plans? So they decide they want to leave $120,000 to a charity of their choice in their will. They give their personal representative or their executor the flexibility to choose which assets to give that might have the highest capital gain. So looking at some of those securities, looking at RSPs and RIFs, that sort of thing. The estate may save up to $84,000 in tax. And so rather than paying almost $200,000 in tax, the estate will pay $106,000. Each beneficiary will receive a little bit less. So in this demonstration, they received $325,000 versus $337,000. Yet the charity of their choice receives $120,000. So that's pretty powerful, especially for a lot of the grassroots charities that, you know, a lot of us support throughout Edmonton. Like, imagine what the Pride Center could do with that, or any other charity. And what a legacy that you would be able to leave that really reflects the values that you have. And so I hope that this illustration just kind of considers, or that this illustration shows that, you know, you can do both. You can include, you know, gifts to family while still impacting causes that you care about. We all tend to underestimate the assets that we have. And when we die, I mean, that's going to be our biggest income ever reported. It's also going to be our biggest tax bill. So there's huge opportunity there to really have an impact. And so I've included a couple of resources here that you guys are welcome to look into. Maybe I'll send the slide deck over to you after the presentation, Larry. Willpower.ca, this is actually a public campaign running throughout Canada that's basically encouraging everybody to include a gift to charity in their wills. They have some really great articles. They have some great calculators that you can use and great articles, and they're very unbiased because they're just a public education campaign. So in no way do they reflect like the charity I work for or anything like that. My charity does have an estate planning organizer that I will send a copy of to Larry as well afterwards, and he can pass it around. This is just a useful thing that you can use as you're looking to update your will or whatever you might be looking at. Again, zero obligation whatsoever to include, you know, a gift to charity when you're doing that. It's just a great way to get your plans in order. And then we will be hosting an event on March 13th. Guy Milner is actually helping organize it. So some of you may have heard about this, but he basically strong-armed us into doing this, and we're really excited. But we're going to be bringing in a wills and estates lawyer and a panel of some LGBTQ2S+ donors who have supported the U of A, just to kind of talk about some of their considerations around estate planning, giving, and some of the unique considerations that our community does have. Because obviously, you know, circumstances look a little bit different, and sometimes it's not always easy to find answers. So hopefully our lawyer will be able to answer any questions that folks might have as they come in. Okay, and that's it for my formal presentation. So I'll just stop sharing. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hello, we came in late, and so we missed the first part, and this sounds really on the mark for what we need, very relevant. And we're going to be away on March 13th. So you're sending the slides to Larry. Will we be able to get copies of these?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how will we receive them?
Probably over email, right, Larry?
I would assume that's probably between the three of us. We'll get them to you, Jen. I have those here.
Okay.
As an email or an email attachment will work for you.
Perfect. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I may need some help in doing this, but we'll try. There were, I think, maybe we'll start with the chat. There were questions from Roy and Jan. So maybe I'll take Roy's first question first. Has a question about life insurance and asks, for life insurance, are the annual premiums tax deductible?
They are.
So the answer is yes. Jan's question was, does the charity have to pay capital gains on these securities?
We do not. So that is one of the nice things that the federal government has set out for our charities, is that we are exempt from paying those capital gains. So when you transfer them directly to us, you don't pay capital gains and the charity doesn't. So all of that money that would be taxed go to Ottawa instead gets to make an impact to a cause that you care about.
Good, that sounds like a real advantage. Before I go to Roy's second question, are there any questions from the audience? Or comments? Hearing.
Yes, I have a question.
Sorry, I did.
I have a question, Larry.
Oh, Joan.
Yeah.
I hear a disembodied
Yeah.
voice.
So I was just wondering, would it be feasible if you just gave everybody a percentage number on your will, like instead of just breaking it up, like I want, 2,000 to go there and 3, can you just give it all as percentages? Is that doable?
Absolutely. It is.
Okay.
Yeah. And we see it all the time. Just sometimes people have, let's say, like family heirlooms that, are really important to them, and they want to make sure that those specifically go to certain people. In that case, typically people would be looking at gifting something really specific.
Right.
But, if you're just splitting up your assets, like as a whole, and you say, I want, 10% of my estate to go here, 20% to go there, that makes it super easy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Roy, your second question, and then Jan.
So
Okay.
my second question was, if you set up your estate so in your will to be strictly percentage distribution of assets, can the executor take it upon themselves to distribute that the way you were suggesting, where some of the assets, be it shares, go directly to the charitable, or do you have to state that within the will itself?
This would be a little bit dependent on your situation. We always recommend, let's say you're updating your will, that you include an additional clause in your estate plan, like in your will, just stating that you give your personal executive the ability to choose, which assets go where. And your lawyer can help you draft that language. And, the charity that I work for, we have language that we'll provide to folks that they can use. It really depends what your will looks like today. If you don't have that in there and, you have it set up as a percentage to each of these different areas, more than likely, as long as there's nothing too specific in there, and I would recommend you talk to a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, just to ensure that they're being as tax efficient as possible. Most of the time they would be, as long as it's general enough, but it's always great to have it legally in writing because it is your last will and testament.
And can I just clarify your answer to my first question? When I asked about the life insurance annual premiums being tax deductible, I have life insurance going to my nieces, not to a charitable donation.
Okay.
Is that still tax deductible?
That is not. So that would only be if you're donating your life insurance policy to a charity.
Thank you.
So because it's going to your nieces and your family, it would not.
Okay.
That's
CRA, unfortunately.
Roy.
I just have a question of interest. If you are not formally married, does that make a difference about spousal distributions? Let's say you've only been living together.
Again, this is a great question for your lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand is in common law in Alberta, if you live with your partner for X amount of time, you are basically given the same rights as if you were married. However, if you have assets that you acquired before you were together, that can get a little bit sticky. And I've seen this with certain donors to the university where they've been common law, and then the estate takes forever going through probate, and they try to, take some of the assets that realistically were jointly held, but unfortunately, the courts don't always see it that way. And so something to talk to your lawyer about and to make sure that you include in your will so that it's really clearly laid out.
I have one more question, if I may. If you have a home and you're not leaving it to your spouse, but to friends and or family, is that taxable on their end?
No, because it's your primary residence.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one more question too.
A question from Joan, is it?
Do you recommend, as far as your expertise goes, your executor being the lawyer that you're going to draw up the will? Does that work well, or do you think it's better to, or does it really just depend, like having two different people, or just, I'm thinking it'd be easier for the lawyer just to be the executor, but.
I'm not sure, like, if your lawyer offers, those services, it's up to you. Ultimately, it's your estate. Again, like I see all sorts of different situations with folks that I work with. Like there's third-party companies that you can always hire as well, who can act as your executor. Just really depends on what's in your will, how personal it is, how specific it is, how many clauses are in there. Because I know that can be a challenge for, a lot of folks, is finding somebody that they trust to ensure that their wishes are carried out, and also ensuring that, things move along efficiently. And sometimes when you do have multiple parties, it can get a little bit trickier, but also in some ways it can also ensure a bit more objective approaches.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions from anyone in the audience? We're a little short.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more
Right.
question, Larry. For RIF,
Mhm.
can you set alternate benefactors? So for an example, you leave your RIF to your spouse, but can you set a secondary benefactor so that if they happen to not succeed you, then it automatically goes to the next benefactor listed?
Absolutely. So you can make them a contingent beneficiary of your RIF.
Thank you.
And you can also split up your beneficiaries by percentage as well. So you don't need to leave 100% to one person. You could always say, I want to leave 50% here, 50% there.
Thank you.
I ask about transnational donations. I have given some gifts through the Canadian-US funding arrangements. What's it called? CCAR. But it requires quite a large donation even to be eligible to give anything. Are there any other devices that would permit one to make and get a Canadian tax receipt for a donation in another jurisdiction?
Oof, that's a good question, Larry. So there is some treaty law that exists between Canada and the States. So for certain charities, depending on what your personal connection is, you may be able to get a Canadian tax receipt. But like in my world with the U of A, if you are an American, let's say, who donates to the university and you're an alumni of the school, you're eligible for the charitable tax receipt. But what we've also done at my charity is we have a US foundation that we work with. And so then they're able to direct the donations through there so that you can get the charitable tax receipt for your home country. So depending on what organization you hope to support and where they are, that would be a great conversation to have with the charity before you initiate it, just to see if there's any benefits. For smaller donations, it can be a little bit trickier because usually the costs associated with running that type of donation through a foundation may exceed what your donation will be. And you want as much of your money to go to the cause as possible.
Exactly. It was that was part of my question to do with the smaller donations, which basically get eaten up, I guess, in this process. Thank you, Jan.
Hilary, would you have a sample of a will that would be written correctly with flexibility?
I can send you like the sample will language that our lawyers have prepared for our charity. And you can take a look at that. I can't share with you any wills that we have on file, obviously, because confidentiality. I mean, I could redact like 99% of it, but every lawyer is a little bit different too. But I can send you kind of the sample language that we send out that typically gets people started.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Is there anyone who has a burning desire to ask an unanswered question or to make a comment? Then I will make one sort of comment. I recall in the pre-retirement session, actually at the university, in terms of thinking simply that the observation was that lots of people are saving for a rainy day and fail to notice that it's pouring outside. So do something useful with our resources seems to be one of the messages that I certainly heard here today. So Hilary, thank you so much for what I think is a very useful, thoughtful conversation. For everyone, we have ways of getting hold of you, and I'll make sure that the people get the documents you had sent to us. And I would like to invite everyone as well for next week's, which is a slightly different format. It will be held at McEwen Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity. They are sponsoring it, and it will form part of their Pride Week celebrations, dealing with basically gay, queer, whichever, joy through the life cycle. I mean, they've called it Through the Ages, which sounds like we're going to talk about gay ancient Egypt or something. It isn't. It's really, it's an intergenerational conversation that will deal with people, with students and some of the seniors from Aging with Pride group. It will be held by Zoom at the usual time. We'll send out the link in the usual way. You are also all invited by McEwen to attend their in person. And the address, specific address is the Roundhouse in Allard Hall. That's the bright green building, 11110, so 111th Street and 104th Avenue. There is parking available behind the building and I think underground. There will be light refreshments served. So anyone who wishes to come, bring friends along, please do so. So that is our plan for next week. And I would be remiss if I didn't close again by thanking Hilary for doing this program and doing it so clearly. So thank you all very much. If there are no final questions from the audience.
Can you just say that address one more time, Larry?
Oh, sure. We'll put it in the chat room as well. It is the McEwen Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity in the Roundhouse. That's part of the building. The Roundhouse in Allard Hall. The street address is 11110 104 Street, and it will be on the poster that comes out.
Thanks.
Actually, where I found it.
Thanks.
So I will turn the meeting back to Jan to close unless there's anything further. Thank you again and goodbye all. We will see you next week.
Thank you. Aging with Pride.
Thank you all. Great seeing you all.
Thank you. Thank you.